You talk about the darkness. You know, people that have never been underground don't know what dark is.
On the 25th of April 2006, Anzac Day, the Beaconsfield gold mine experienced a catastrophic collapse, killing one miner and trapping two within the walls of the mine. Located on the island state of Tasmania, Australia, Beaconsfield was a former gold mining town, operating mines from as early as the 1850s. In the 1870s, gold was discovered in the mines of Beaconsfield, causing a gold rush. This gold brought miners from all over Tasmania and Greater Australia to Beaconsfield, making it the richest gold mining town in Tasmania. As the mines grew and more gold was being discovered, an English company bought out the land and mine, creating Tasmanian Gold Mining Company Limited. This acquisition brought new technologies and more labour to the mine, helping to discover and mine more gold. By 2005, a year before the collapse, the Beaconsfield mine extracted roughly 3,890 kilograms of gold, proving that it was still a lucrative mine even after years of digging and extraction. Now that we know a brief history of the mine, let's explore what happened on the day of the disaster.
Rodney Lowe's reporting there on just one of the many challenges being faced by the rescuers here at Beaconsfield.
On the Tuesday of April 25th, 2006, 17 gold miners set about their normal work day in the town of Beaconsfield, Tasmania. Work operations kicked off as per usual, however no one could have expected that this day would mark one of Australia's most horrific mine collapses and lengthy rescue efforts. Shortly after 9 PM, 3 employees, Todd Russell, Brant Webb and Larry Knight, were working on the 925 metre level of the Beaconsfield mine. At approximately 9:23, a shallow depth earthquake with a 2.3 rating on the Richter scale shook the town of Beaconsfield. This seismic event could be felt deep inside the mine, shaking and moving the earth inside so much that it caused the mine to collapse in on itself. In this moment of brief chaos, 14 miners scrambled out the mines. However, Russell, Webb and Knight weren't so fortunate. Larry Paul Knight of Launceston, Tasmania, was operating a telehandler with a metal cage attachment containing both Webb and Russell when the mine collapsed. He was sadly crushed by the falling rock at the time of the collapse. Webb and Russell, however, miraculously survived the collapse in the metal cage. It measured just 1.5 metres by 1.2 metres, leaving almost no room to move. With 800 tonnes of rock suspended directly overhead, the men lived every second in the mine with the possibility of another collapse. Following the earthquake, Russell had been partially buried by the rubble, his legs covered by the rock, immobilizing his lower half. Webb had been knocked unconscious, and when he awoke, the two miners began the process of freeing Russell from the fallen debris. Using a small lighter to illuminate the surroundings, the men were fully aware of the predicament that they were in. Trapped deep underground, with no way of communicating with the outside world, no fresh water, and only a granola bar between them, the situation looked very, very dire. With no way of knowing when or if they would be rescued, the miners had to find ways to survive the ordeal. The men utilised their work helmets as catchments for water that had dropped through the rocks overhead. However, this was barely adequate and obviously highly contaminated. Furthermore, they split a muesli bar which belonged to Webb, agreeing to wait as long as possible before consuming it. Eventually, stomachs growled and ached, and on the 29th of April, it was decided that they would eat their halves. For the first 5 days of their entrapment, Webb and Russell survived this way, rationing out their food and drinking dirty mine water. Russell had suffered significant injuries to his legs and was in need of medical attention, and Webb wasn't in much better shape, having been just concussed during the initial mine collapse. Meanwhile, 1 kilometre above where the men were trapped, rescue efforts were well underway. Rescuers began clearing rock using a remote-controlled earth mover, and on the morning of the 27th of April, an unfortunate discovery was made. It was the body of Larry Knight, who had been working on the same level as Webb and Russell. He had been crushed while operating the telehandler containing the 2 miners. He was just 44 years old. Rescue teams began using explosives to clear rock soon after the collapse of the mine, which proved to be a very effective method of excavation. However, each blast sent a fresh wave of rubble on the entrapped miners. They never knew if the next explosion would be one to bring down all 800 tons of rock crashing down on them. To distract themselves during this time, Russell and Webb sang The Gambler by Kenny Rogers, which was the only song they both knew. On the evening of the 30th of April, after dozens of excavation attempts with the use of explosives, two rescuers named Pat Ball and Steve Saltmarsh entered the 925-meter level of the mine and called for the two trapped miners. The distant voices of Webb and Russell called back, confirming to the worried friends, relatives, and nation at large that they were still alive. Soon after their discovery, the miners were sent food, water, clothes, and communication devices through a PVC pipe that had been placed through a drill hole. This channel led from the rescuer's position to the metal cage in which the men were trapped. Other supplies such as torches, matches, and cameras were sent through to the men, in addition to iPods containing music from an Australian musical comedian known as Kevin Bloody Wilson, and the American rock band The Foo Fighters. Drilling of the rescue tunnel began on the 4th of May. After a series of delays due to safety concerns, Matthew Gill, the operator of the Beaconsfield mine, claimed that the rock that had to be drilled through, composed of primarily quartz, was 5 times as strong as concrete. As a result, it took 6 days for drilling to be completed, and on the early morning of the 9th of May, the rescue tunnel was finished. Rescuers Donovan Lightfoot, Glenn Burns, and Royce Gill were the ones who broke through into the cage in which Webb and Russell were trapped. This occurred at 4:27 AM on the 9th of May, 2 weeks after the initial mine collapse. Brent Webb was the first to be freed at 4:47 AM, followed by Todd Russell 7 minutes later. The miners were brought up through the tunnel and into a lift shaft, where they were then sent to the surface. At 5:58 AM, in a very emotional scene, Russell and Webb exited the lift at the entrance to the mine, where they could be seen punching the air in celebration. After removing their tags, indicating the end of their shift, they were greeted by the elated family and friends. Both men received treatment at the local Launceston General Hospital shortly after 6 AM for injuries to both their vertebrae and legs. Once the initial celebrations had ended, attention quickly turned to the circumstances of the collapse. An investigation by the Australian Workers' Union on the 15th of May 2006 found that of the miners present at the Beaconsfield mine collapse, not a single one had received adequate workplace hazard and safety training. Furthermore, materials used in the mine were found to be of poor quality or quantity, such as a cement, which had not been used properly to close sections of the mine. Additionally, it was widely known amongst the men that the mesh that was used to prevent rock collapse was not particularly effective. Ultimately, despite these shortfalls in the workplace safety measures, no charges were laid against any individual or company. The physical recovery from their ordeal took Todd Russell and Brant Webb a relatively short amount of time. However, the psychological scars have not yet healed, even over 15 years later.
A lot of it is post-traumatic stress, and everybody around me could see the direction that I was taking, except for me. There was friends that were putting their hand out to offer the help, and I elected to do it my way. I thought I was coping with it the way I should have been coping with it, but I got a reality check when I came home, and I was met at the front door by Carolyn and the 3 kids with their bags packed, ready for them to move out, because of the person I became after being stuck underground. It was a monster.
Since the Beaconsfield mine collapse in 2006, over 40 accidents have occurred in Australia's mines, proving that the industry still has a long way to go in ensuring that all mine workers are safe. Thankfully, however, nothing has ever come close to the scale and notoriety of the Beaconsfield collapse in the years since, and hopefully this continues into the future. Thank you all for watching. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing and liking the video. Thank you.